Chapter 1. The Calm Before He Crossed the Line. The day he took our daughter, I didn't scream. I didn't chase his plane. I chased the paper trail. Every forged signature, every passport request, every lie he thought no one would see, I found it before the border did. He believed charm could outsmart the law, but he forgot I make a living reading the fine print that ruins men like him. When the French police stopped him at Charles de Gaulle, it wasn't luck. It was preparation. My name is Anna Caldwell, and this is how I turned proof into justice. The morning light in Seattle always looked softer through my kitchen window, diffused by the mist that rolled in from the sound. 3 years after my divorce, I had grown used to quiet breakfast with Sophie, her small hands carefully arranging strawberries on her cereal like it was an art project. At 35, I had stopped expecting chaos or love or anything unpredictable. Routine was my peace. I worked as an immigration case specialist at a small firm downtown, the kind that handled student visas and green card renewals for families who still believed in beginnings. My boss called me unshakable, a word I wore like armor. Every morning I packed Sophie's lunch, dropped her at school, and walked the 6 blocks to the office. By the time the coffee machine sputtered to life, my day already felt predictable. Ethan Ward used to say I liked control too much. Maybe he was right. Control had kept me afloat when everything else fell apart. He was 38 now, still handsome in that polished corporate way that once made me believe he knew what he wanted. When the scandal at Ward and Tate Consulting broke financial mismanagement, undisclosed accounts, he lost almost everything except his charm. Somehow he managed to rebuild just enough to appear respectable again. The court had granted him supervised visits at first, then as part of our parenting plan, 2 unsupervised weekends a month. Sophie adored him, in the way children adore the idea of a parent who rarely says no. He brought extravagant toys and promises that always began with next time. I let her enjoy them, but I never forgot how easily charm turns into manipulation. Her 8th birthday fell on a Saturday that summer. The party was simple, a backyard picnic with balloons and cupcakes. Ethan arrived late as always, carrying a silver gift bag and that disarming grin. He kissed Sophie on the forehead and handed her an envelope. Inside were 2 printed tickets. She squealed. "A science exhibition in Vancouver. Daddy says we can go next month," she said, clutching the tickets. I kept my smile steady. "That's a nice thought, honey, but we can't go right now. Your passport is locked until the court says otherwise." Ethan's expression tightened for a second before he turned it into a laugh. "It's just an idea," he said lightly. "Don't overthink it." After the guests left and Sophie went to bed, I found myself scrubbing frosting off the counter just to keep my hands busy. His casual tone had been too deliberate, his choice of destination too specific. I picked up the phone and called Claire Henson, my friend and attorney since the divorce. "Do you think he's testing you again?" she asked after I told her about the tickets. "Testing or rehearsing," I said. "He likes to see how far he can push before the law pushes back." "Then let's not wait for that," she replied. "We can renew the restraining order and file an order preventing removal. Better to reinforce the fence before he tries the gate." The next afternoon, I met her at the courthouse. The hall smelled of paper and stale coffee, a scent I had learned to associate with protection. Judge Eleanor Price remembered my case. She had been firm but fair during our custody hearing, emphasizing stability for Sophie. When Claire presented the new filings, Judge Price nodded. "This is a precaution," she said, glancing over her glasses. "But a smart one. I'll sign the TRO and forward a copy to the State Department's Passport Services and Customs and Border Protection. They'll flag any international attempt until further notice." "Thank you," I said quietly. Claire smiled. "You've done this before, Anna. Calm and procedural. That's how we win." Back at the office, while drafting case notes for a client, I couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan was already 2 steps into something. He had always been a strategist, both in business and in arguments. Even when we were married, he planned fights like negotiations wait for emotion, then strike with reason. It was exhausting to love someone who treated affection like leverage. That Thursday, I stopped by Sophie's school to drop off a forgotten sweater. The receptionist greeted me with an uncertain smile. "Oh, Mrs. Caldwell, Mr. Ward already stopped by this morning. He requested a copy of Sophie's birth certificate for school records. Said you'd approved it." My hand froze around the sweater. "I didn't," I said evenly. "Did he sign anything?" She hesitated. "A release form. It looked official." I took a steady breath. "Please email me a copy of that form," I said. By the time I reached home, the document was sitting in my inbox. The signature looked like mine's slightly rushed same curve on the A, but it wasn't. The timestamp was from that morning exactly 15 minutes before I'd logged into my office computer. He was getting bolder. That night after Sophie went to sleep, I opened my laptop and pulled up the court's public docket. Ethan's name appeared twice, once under our existing parenting plan and again under a new entry filed just 2 days ago. Petition to modify parenting schedule. He wanted more time. Maybe permanent custody. Maybe a loophole big enough to take her abroad. The cursor blinked at the bottom of the screen as if daring me to panic. I didn't. I took a breath, saved a PDF copy, and uploaded it to the folder labeled Sophie Legal. When I closed the laptop, the room went silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I looked at the photo on the fridge, Sophie on her first day of school, her smile missing one front tooth, sunlight on her hair. Ethan always underestimated me because I didn't raise my voice. He forgot that silence could be strategy. He forgot that I made a living reading every small line people hope no one ever notices. If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Thank you. Chapter 2. The Paper Trail. He forgot. I could read. Monday mornings at the office were usually calm, the kind of quiet where the sound of the copier felt louder than it should. I was reviewing a client file when a notification from the Department of State portal blinked on my screen. I had clearance to access public record requests, so it wasn't unusual, but this one carried my own name. At first, I thought it was a system glitch. Then I opened it. There it was. An application for an emergency minor passport under the name Anna Ward. My breath caught. The attached signature looked familiar, but off the A looped too high, the R flat at the bottom. Whoever had forged it knew my handwriting well enough to mimic it. Only one person did. I printed the document, my fingers cold despite the hum of the air conditioner. The form listed the applicant as Ethan Ward, father of the minor Sophie Ward. The emergency reason box read urgent family travel. I could feel my pulse in my throat. He was actually doing it. I picked up the phone and dialed Claire. She answered on the second ring. "You sound like you found a body," she said, half joking. "Worse," I said. "A fake version of me." Within 30 minutes, she was in my office, coffee and hand hair still damp from her morning run. I slid the printed forms across my desk. She scanned the pages, eyes narrowing. "That's your signature." "It's not," I said. "But it's close enough to pass." She exhaled. "We'll add it to the restraining order file, and I'll contact the fraud division at the State Department. You're sure this came through official channels logged in under my portal ID? Someone filed it last Friday." Claire looked at me, the lawyer in her already calculating. "Then he's testing whether the system notices before you do. Let's make sure it does." By afternoon, she had filed a supplemental report and emailed scanned copies to the court clerk. The temporary restraining order was now backed by a fraud alert. Every international checkpoint tied to Sophie's passport number would flag for review. That night, after Sophie went to bed, I drove to the old house Ethan and I once shared, the one I had kept in my name after the divorce but rented out for a while. The new tenants had moved out the previous month, and the security system was still active under my code. I accessed the footage from the last week. The grainy video flickered, time-stamped 9:47 p.m. Ethan's silver sedan pulled into the driveway. He walked straight to the garage, unlocked a storage cabinet, and took out a small box I recognized instantly. It had held Sophie's expired passport, the one we'd turned in when her renewal got delayed. My stomach clenched. He was using every crack left open. The next morning, I met Claire again at her downtown office. The building overlooked Puget Sound, all glass and metal. Inside, everything smelled like leather and ink. She was already on a call when I arrived. I caught the end of her sentence. "Yes, we need a lookout entry in CBP's system immediately." Child's name, Sophie Ward, date of birth, January 10th, 2017. When she hung up, she motioned for me to sit. "Customs and Border Protection will place a flag. If he tries to leave the country, the system will alert both the State Department and the Office of Children's Issues. Do you think he'll risk an airport check?" "He's arrogant," she said. "He'll assume his paperwork looks clean enough, but he's forgetting you know every step of this process." My phone buzzed before I could answer. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, then picked up. "Anna, it's Marissa." For a second, I couldn't place the name. Then it clicked. Marissa Green, Ethan's former assistant. She'd quit around the same time the financial scandal broke. "Hi, Marissa. It's been a while." "I know." "Sorry to call out of nowhere," she said, voice low, rushed. I heard something you need to know. Ethan's been trying to file for a business visa through Ward and Tate again, under a new partnership name. He added a dependent minor to the application. Sophie's name. I gripped the phone tighter. How do you know I still have friends at the firm? They thought it was strange. I asked them to forward me a copy before it got sealed for processing. Can you send it to me? I already did, she said. Check your email. It's under the subject, WT application. I know this could get me in trouble, but after what he did to the junior staff back then, I can't watch him do it again. Thank you, I said quietly. You might have just protected a child. When I hung up, Claire raised an eyebrow. That sounded important, I explained. She nodded grimly. We'll include that with the fraud file. Between this and the forged signature, it's enough to trigger a preventive notification under the Hague Convention. We spent the next hour assembling the packet, copies of the fake application, the video still of Ethan at the house, Marissa's email, my verified signature samples. Claire uploaded everything to the secure portal for the U.S. Office of Children's Issues. When we finished, she leaned back. He's about to learn what it feels like when a system he's exploited finally pays attention. Driving home, I replayed the conversation in my head. For years, Ethan had relied on charm and timing to dodge accountability. He wasn't violent, not in the physical sense. His weapon had always been manipulation. He counted on me freezing long enough for him to win. But this time I was already moving. That evening, the rain returned soft and steady against the windows. Sophie sat at the dining table drawing pictures of the two of us, with a house and a cat, no father in sight. I tucked the drawings into a folder before she could see me reading them. She was starting to understand absence in her own way. My phone buzzed again just as I turned off the kitchen lights. A message from Ethan. He wrote that he'd been thinking about us, that maybe it was time to start fresh, maybe take Sophie somewhere new for the summer, just the three of us. He added a smile emoji at the end, like a knife dressed in kindness. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then pressed print. The paper slid out warm from the printer, the ink still wet. I placed it into the expanding binder labeled Evidence. He wanted me to answer, to argue, to give him something to twist. I didn't. I turned off the phone and set it face down on the counter. When the house went silent, I looked through the window toward the street where the rain turned the pavement silver. The reflection of the porch light rippled in the puddles. He thought I was weak because I was the one who stayed calm. He mistook quiet for surrender. But motherhood had taught me something sharper than anger. Being a mother meant you didn't get to guess. You learned to know, to prepare, to anticipate every move before it landed. And tonight I knew exactly what he was planning. If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Thank you, Chapter 3. The Flight That Never Took Off. The email arrived at 7:40 in the morning while I was packing Sophie's lunch. Subject line: Thank you for providing authorization for international field travel. I reread it twice, then a third time, the words refusing to make sense. I had not signed any authorization for anything beyond a museum trip across town. The sender was the school's automated system. A form had been uploaded with a parent signature and a box checked international educational travel. I grabbed my keys. The toast popped. I turned off the stove and called my neighbor to walk Sophie to school. By the time I reached the front office, I could taste metal at the back of my throat. The receptionist looked up, startled. "Oh, hi, Ms. Caldwell. Is everything okay?" What form was uploaded to Sophie's file this morning? My voice was calm, too calm. She clicked through screens. A travel authorization. It shows a parent signature. It says international field experience, dates pending. I did not sign that. She hesitated. Mr. Ward came by first thing. He said you had already approved and he was just confirming. He was very polite. I need a copy of what he presented, I said. Right now. She printed the form. The signature looked like mine, the A, looping just enough to pass to a casual eye. It was the same signature I had used on an in-state field trip release last year. I could see the faint compression artifacts where a scan had been pasted into a new document. The school nurse peeked from the doorway. He checked Sophie out 15 minutes ago. He said there was a family emergency. I swallowed. What time? 7:25. I thanked them, walked to my car, and dialed Claire. She answered immediately. Say it, she said. He has her, I said. He used a scanned signature on a new authorization and checked her out. I breathed once, steady and deliberate. I am going to Seattle PD now with the original forms. I am already on my way to the courthouse, Claire said. We update the TRO, we file a sworn declaration about the forged authorization, and we push everything to state and CBP. Text me from the precinct. I will get a judge to sign within the hour. At the precinct, I laid out the originals, the fake, and the email log. The officer who took my statement, a woman with a pragmatist's eyes, copied everything, then called a supervisor. 15 minutes later, a detective entered with a legal pad. You have an active restraining order preventing removal without consent, he said. That will help. We will file custodial interference and forgery. We will also push this to the FBI's Crimes Against Children unit, so coordination is immediate. I called Claire with that update. She texted back at 10:12, I am in the clerk's office, Judge Price is available. At 10:15, she sent a photo of the signed order. Temporary restraining order amended and extended. Order preventing removal filed and granted. She added, I am forwarding to the Department of State Passport Services and the Office of Children's Issues. CBP will receive a lookout request. Airline liaison will alert gate agents. At 11:05, my phone chimed. Office of Children's Issues acknowledgement received. Case number assigned. The email was crisp, almost clinical. It might as well have been a lifeline. I drove home on autopilot, every traffic light an insult. I opened the binder I had been building for weeks and slid in the new order, the police report number, the OCI case number. I printed 2 more copies and scanned everything to a secure drive. Then I called my neighbor and asked her to bring Sophie's backpack to my house. Saying it out loud undid me for a moment. I let the tears burn and pass. The airline liaison called as I was drying my face. This is security with Delta Airlines in Seattle. We received a federal request for an alert on a minor passenger, Sophie Ward, connected to your custody order. We show 2 tickets purchased on a partner itinerary, Seattle to Los Angeles to Paris. Departure in 40 minutes. Is Sophie on that plane? A pause. The boarding pass for the first leg was issued. The system has placed a do not depart flag on the minor's record. If they have boarded, we will coordinate with the gate to pull them. If the plane is already taxiing, the intercept will occur upon landing in Los Angeles. I am also notifying our partner on the international leg to place the alert for Charles de Gaulle. Police aux Frontières will receive notice through their channels. Thank you, I said, gripping the counter with my free hand. Please confirm when the alert is noted at each handoff. I will call you back as soon as I have an update. I texted Claire. SE to LAX to CDG, Delta partner. Claire replied, already in the airline alert system. CBP lookout set, OCI notified. Good work getting the originals to PD. The house felt too still. I paced from the kitchen to the hall and back. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered. Ms. Caldwell, this is Special Agent Ruiz with the FBI Crimes Against Children unit in Seattle. The local report has been elevated to our office. We are coordinating with OCI and CBP. You did the right thing coming in immediately. We will monitor the itinerary and make sure the flag follows your daughter through each checkpoint. Is there anything else I should be doing? You have done everything right. Keep your phone with you at all times. If the father contacts you, do not engage. Save every message. After he hung up, I sank into a chair and stared at the wall. I thought of Sophie's small hand in mine on her first day of kindergarten, how she whispered that she was brave even while she trembled. Sometimes love is this quiet practice of preparing for the worst, so your child never has to. My phone rang again, airline security. They boarded in Seattle before the alert hit the gate. The flight has departed. We have confirmed the handoff to Los Angeles. The minor's record is flagged and the gate there is prepared. An escort will meet the aircraft. If the father avoids the gate checkpoint, the system will still follow the minor's passport record at departure for Paris. Thank you, I said, and then I had nothing to add. Thank you was all I had, and it felt like prayer. I pictured Ethan's face, the casual confidence he wore like a suit jacket. He would be telling her stories right now. Paris new schools, a new life where he was the hero who rescued her from the boring mother who liked rules. He would forget to mention the way rules keep children safe. Traffic on I-5 crawled in my peripheral vision through the window. A child laughed on the sidewalk. The world kept doing what it does when your own is paused. At 2:08, my phone vibrated again. Delta. We met the aircraft at the gate in Los Angeles, the liaison said. The minor and the father proceeded directly to the connecting gate. Our staff confirmed the flag and contacted CBP. The airline operating the next leg has placed an international alert on the booking. French border police will be notified in advance of arrival. Do you know if they boarded? They are in the process of boarding now, she said. The alert is active. The French authorities will be prepared upon arrival. I thanked her and hung up. My hands shook. I made tea and did not drink it. I sat on the floor by Sophie's bedroom door and pressed my palm to the wood. I thought if I could just hold the door long enough, she would walk through it. By late evening, Claire arrived with takeout and a hard look that meant she was scared and refusing to show it. She set cartons on the table and studied my face. "You need food," she said. "I need her." "You will have her," she said, "and he will learn what foreign border control looks like when a mother who knows the system draws the map." We ate in silence, each of us chewing mechanically the way you do when your stomach has closed, but your brain knows better. Afterward, she reviewed the file again, then added a short affidavit about the forged school authorization to the digital folder. Every minute had to serve a purpose. Near midnight, my phone rang with a number I did not recognize. The connection sounded transatlantic. "Ms. Caldwell," a woman said in measured English, warm but formal. "My name is Officer Dumas with Police aux Frontières. We have received an alert for a minor American citizen. We are coordinating with the United States Embassy. We need confirmation of the custody orders and the restraining order preventing removal." "They are in your system already," I said, "but I can resend. Please do. We will meet the incoming flight. If the minor is on board, we will separate her from the adult pending verification and notify your embassy." I emailed the documents immediately and copied OCI. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and watched the clock. Sometime around 2, I fell into a thin, stiff sleep and jolted awake at 4 when my phone buzzed again. The email preview read, "Receiving documents. Will confirm upon inspection at CDG." I waited with the lights off, memorizing the patterns of shadow on the ceiling. At 6 a.m., Claire texted me outside. We drove to her office together, the sun lifting behind the skyline in a pale wash. She made coffee, and we sat by the window with our phones on the table between us, two small rectangles that now held the world. At 8:31, my phone rang. The number was Paris. I put it on speaker. A new voice, calm and steady. "Ms. Caldwell, this is Lena Brooks with the consular section at the United States Embassy in Paris. We are in contact with Police aux Frontières at Charles de Gaulle. The aircraft has landed. French border police have requested additional identity confirmation at primary inspection. Please stay on the line." I closed my eyes and let her voice anchor me. I could hear pages turning, the muffled echo of a busy office. Minutes stretched. Claire reached across the table and gripped my forearm, a silent brace. The call clicked, then resumed. "Update," Lena said. The child's passport record showed the do not depart flag and the Hague-related advisory. The officers have separated the child and the father at the checkpoint. They are verifying the documents now. Stand by. I breathed in counts of 4 and out in counts of 4. Somewhere in that long minute, the part of me that had resisted panic gave itself permission to feel. I let it, then set it aside again. Sophie would need me clear when she came back on the line. Another click. "Miss Caldwell," Lena said, voice brighter, gentler. "Your daughter is safe. She is with female officers and a child protection worker. They will bring her to our embassy facility next. The father is being detained for questioning regarding documentation irregularities and a violation of a custody order. Thank you for the thorough file. It made this very straightforward." I could not speak. Claire said softly, "Is Sophie okay?" "She is asking for her mother," Lena said. "She seems confused but not harmed. She says she was told they were going on a long vacation. We will get her some breakfast and a quiet space. Do you have a preferred way for us to reach you once she is settled?" "This number I managed, any time. We will call you within the hour," Lena said. "And Ms. Caldwell." Not many people are this prepared. It made a difference. When the call ended, I realized I was shaking. Claire stood and wrapped her arms around me. I let myself lean into her for a moment, then stepped back and wiped my face with the heel of my hand. I needed to be the mother Sophie expected to hear, the one whose voice did not tremble. The airline liaison followed with a final note. The father had attempted to present the school authorization as proof of permission. The French officer had already read the restraining order and the fraud affidavit. The officer asked a simple question: "Is this an in-state field trip authorization or an international consent form?" The paper fell apart under the weight of its own lie. Claire whispered, "That is the cleanest kind of justice." I stared at my phone at the blank screen that would soon carry her voice. I could almost hear her before it rang, the way she said "Mom" like it was a key. The first tear slid without warning. then another. I pressed my fingers to the glass and breathed out in a voice I barely recognized, low and certain. He was not stopped by me. He was stopped by the law with my fingerprints on the paperwork that carried him there. If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Thank you. Chapter 4. The Courtroom and the Mirror. 2 weeks later, the paperwork caught up to the plane. The email from the Office of Children's Issues arrived just after sunrise. Plain text and final. French authorities had honored the request, and Washington would take jurisdiction. The Assistant United States Attorney copied the family court clerk. The words were dry and careful. The meaning was not. He would answer here. Sophie had fallen back into our routines the way children do when grown-ups make the world steady again. We ate oranges at breakfast, and she asked if leaves changed color at the same time in France. I told her the trees take their time everywhere, and she laughed like she did not remember trying to be brave at an embassy with strangers. At night, I read her the same book I read when she was 5. She curled into my side and asked the question that had been waiting behind her teeth. He said we were going on a trip. Are you mad at me? I kissed her hair and felt the tiny tremor of worry she was trying to hide. I am not mad at you. I am happy you are home. Paris had smelled like coffee and jet fuel and lemon floor cleaner. The embassy room had a couch with a scratch on the arm and a coloring book that already had a few pages filled in. When the door opened and she ran to me, she was lighter than I remembered and heavier at the same time. She looked up with wet eyes and asked if I was sad about the vacation we did not take. I said I was happy because she was back where her bed knew her name. She smiled at that. Then she climbed onto my lap and asked for pancakes when we got home. We left with a packet of papers and the kind of gratitude that makes your chest hurt. By September, the case had a number, a courtroom, and a date. Family Court, 7th floor. The hallway outside was a quiet churn of whispers and the squeak of shoes and the metallic click of doors. Claire met me by the elevator with a stack of binders and her unflinching face. You ready? She asked. Ready, I said. Inside the room was wood and silence. Judge Eleanor Price sat like gravity. When she looked down at us, I remembered the day she signed the first order that kept Sophie's passport from becoming a ticket. Behind me, a few rows back, I saw a woman with neat gray hair twist a handkerchief until it wrung. Emily Ward had the tired posture of a person who had run out of rationalizations. She gave me a small nod that broke halfway into apology. Ethan entered with a public defender and a polished expression that was trying to find where it belonged. His suit was the same kind of navy he had always favored. For a second, I saw the man at our wedding who believed luck was a skill. Then the image slid away. The judge called the case. The clerk read the caption. Claire stood first. She moved like a person who had built a bridge and knew every rivet. She began with the travel orders, the parenting plan, the previous restraining orders. She handed up certified copies from the court file, the Office of Children's Issues case log, the airline liaison, affidavits, the school email, and the forged authorization. Each paper clicked into place like a gear. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Ethan's counsel rose and said he was a father who wanted to be involved, that there had been miscommunication, that no harm had occurred because the child had been safe and with him. He said the trip was a chance to reconnect. He said jurisdictional complications had confused the process. He did not say forged. He did not say took. Claire offered the video frame from the garage of the old house, Ethan opening the storage cabinet, where expired documents slept. She offered my handwriting samples next to the fake release. She offered the text message he sent, trying to coax me into making his plan look like compromise. She offered the airline's chain of custody for the alert. She offered the French officer's note where a single question cracked the lie open. Is this an in-state school release or an international consent? Then she called me. My shoes sounded too loud on the floor. I took the oath and found my voice where I had left it in the file folders and the steady work. I told the timeline slowly enough to be accurate and quickly enough to keep a pulse. The email at 7:40, the update to the order just after 10, the acknowledgement from OCI at 11:05, the calls with Delta, the contact with French border police, the separation at the checkpoint, the embassy room with the scratch on the couch. The judge asked a few questions. Did I ever give written permission for international travel? No. Did I ever tell the school to release a birth certificate for passport purposes? No. Did I recognize the signature on the forged authorization? It resembles mine, but it is not mine. How do I know? Because I know the way my own hand makes an A, and because I do not sign away my child. Ethan asked to speak. His counsel squeezed his sleeve. He stood anyway. I was trying to be present, he said. She keeps me at arm's length. I thought a trip would be good for us. I did not mean to cause trouble. I did not think it would go this far. He looked at me like I might nod and tell the court we were both reasonable people who had misread the calendar. For a second, I could hear the voice he had used before deals and birthdays, the soft persuasion built from familiarity. Then Claire stood. Your Honor, intent is not the standard when the acts are this clear. The State Department was involved. Customs and Border Protection placed a lookout. French border police separated a minor from an adult at primary inspection. The Office of Children's Issues processed this under the Hague framework. This is not a misunderstanding about a weekend. This is custodial interference accompanied by forgery. The judge turned a page. Her fingertip paused on a line. She spoke without flourish. The court finds that statutes RCW 9A.40.060 and RCW 9A.60.020 are implicated by these facts. The pattern of conduct demonstrates a willful attempt to remove a minor from the jurisdiction in violation of a court order and through the use of falsified documentation. The impact on the child weighs heavily. The clerk's pen scratched. The room became so still I could hear Emily breathe. Then a new voice rose from the gallery. It was careful and low. The judge looked up. Counsel, identify yourself. The man stepped forward. Silver hair, steady eyes, the measured cadence of someone who knows the weight of words. Robert Myers, Your Honor. I requested leave to address a conflict matter and to place a declaration on the record. If the court will permit, I represented Mr. Ward some years ago in an unrelated civil dispute. I withdrew from any involvement in his matters after reviewing preliminary documents in this case. The court has my withdrawal and the written waiver from the prior file. I now represent Ms. Caldwell for limited purposes related to evidence management and to ensure the previous conflict is clear. The judge studied him for a long second. You have filed the necessary notices? Yes, Your Honor. She nodded. Proceed. He turned slightly toward me and then back to the bench. I once represented him, he said, voice even. Today I represent the truth. The timeline and documents speak plainly. I submit a declaration regarding chain of custody for exhibits and a statement of professional withdrawal. My involvement is narrow and complete with this filing. Claire took the declaration, reviewed it in a glance, and handed it up. The judge read and placed it in the file. The shift in the room was small, but it registered. Even people who had once been on Ethan's side had stepped away from that gravity. Claire called one more witness. Emily stood hand-trembling as she took the oath. She did not look at her son when she spoke. He told me he was taking her on a long vacation, she said, voice thin. He told me it was fine. He told me he had permission. When I asked to see it, he changed the subject. I should have known. I wanted to believe he had changed. I am ashamed that I did not ask harder questions. She looked at me then, and at Sophie sitting with a child advocate 2 rows behind coloring with a dull red pencil. Emily's eyes filled. My granddaughter told me she thought they would live in Paris. She said Daddy said we would be there forever. I am so sorry. She pressed the handkerchief to her mouth and returned to her seat smaller than when she had stood. Ethan's counsel offered a few tepid questions about intention. The answers died on the air. Claire made a short closing. There was no anger in it, only math. Orders, dates, statutes, the measurable harm of pretending rules are an opinion. When she sat, the judge removed her glasses and took the silence like a breath. Stand, please. We stood. Sophie looked up, then back to her page. For the reasons stated, the court finds sufficient evidence to conclude that Mr. Ward committed custodial interference and engaged in conduct amounting to forgery as defined by statute. Criminal proceedings will be addressed separately. For purposes of this court's authority, the parenting plan is modified. Mr. Ward's visitation rights are suspended. Any future contact with the minor shall occur only if and when this court authorizes supervised visitation at a court-approved facility after successful completion of parenting classes and a psychological evaluation. A civil restraining order shall issue prohibiting Mr. Ward from contact with Ms. Caldwell and requiring that he remain at least 1,000 feet from her residence and place of employment. Further, Mr. Ward shall comply with all directives from probation, including community supervision, and any violation will result in immediate review, the clerk wrote. The bailiff watched Ethan from a quiet distance. I felt nothing like victory and everything like relief. Ethan's jaw flexed. He looked at me with something that wanted to be fury and landed on disbelief. "This is excessive," he said, the old gloss peeling. I did not hurt her. The judge looked at him with a calm that could scrape paint. "You taught her that adults who love her can take her somewhere without permission and call it love. You taught her that a rule is a suggestion if it is inconvenient. That is harm." He stared at the table. The room breathed again. The judge signed the orders. The clerk stamped them. The sound was small and decisive. When the hearing ended, the shuffle of movement felt loud. Lawyers gathered papers. The child advocate handed Sophie a new blue pencil. Claire squeezed my hand, then stepped aside to make room. Emily approached with the careful steps of an apology that knows it cannot erase anything. She held out an envelope. Her voice shook. "I used to think my son just wanted to be a father. Now I know he wanted to win. I am sorry for the years I did not see it. If you will allow it, I would like to write to Sophie under your rules. I will not speak of him. I will only tell her about the days she loved the color yellow and the time she learned to tie her shoes." I took the envelope. The paper felt heavy for its size. "Thank you," I said. "We will see." Her eyes filled again and she nodded, understanding that grace does not erase boundaries. Outside, the air was crisp and the sun sat high enough to warm the courthouse steps. Sophie raced ahead to a patch of light and spun until her hair lifted. Claire stood beside me with a face that finally let relief show. People walked past holding coffee cups, and traffic hummed, and a siren somewhere headed in another direction. For a moment, the world righted itself. I watched my daughter tilt her face to the sun and hold the day like a new thing. My breath left me in a quiet rush. Justice does not need to shout. It only needs to be signed in the right place. If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Thank you. Chapter 5. Proof Not Rage. The fall air in Seattle carried the scent of rain and cedar, soft enough to make the city look forgiven. A year had passed since the last hearing, and time had done what it always does. It blurred edges, softened noise, and gave space for new beginnings to breathe. The Office for Safe Passage occupied the top floor of a renovated brick building near Pioneer Square. It had once been a warehouse and still smelled faintly of dust and ink. Now it was filled with files, warm light, and the quiet hum of women talking in low, steady voices. Claire and I had started the nonprofit 9 months ago after too many mothers came to us with stories that echoed mine. We wanted to make preparation a habit, not a reaction. I had traded the courtroom tension for research and training, helping other women understand international custody laws, teaching them how to protect what mattered before someone tried to take it. My days were long, but they were my choice. Every time I saw a woman walk out of our office a little taller, holding a folder marked with her own name and her child's, I felt something close to peace. Marissa Green had joined us in the spring. She had changed since I first met her, less anxious, more certain of her own boundaries. She managed our digital evidence training program, teaching clients how to recognize forged documents and metadata trails. Watching her teach was like watching someone repaint a wall that had once been fire damaged. You could still see the outline of what happened, but it was brighter now. Lena Brooks visited from Paris in September. She stood by the window, smiling at the skyline that stretched from the port to the hills. "You Americans always look up," she said. "In Paris, we look across." I laughed and told her maybe that was why we trip over fewer cobblestones. She helped us create a direct channel between Safe Passage and the U.S. embassies abroad. When she left, she handed me a keychain shaped like the Eiffel Tower. "For when you travel on your own terms," she said. Sophie was 9 now, taller, quick to question everything. She loved her art classes and had started keeping small notebooks filled with sketches of bridges and airplanes. Once she showed me one and said, "I think people draw what they want to cross." I told her she might be right. One Thursday afternoon, as I sorted case files, the receptionist brought in a thick envelope with handwriting I recognized. Emily Ward. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a letter written on stationery from a rehabilitation center in Oregon. Anna. I am taking care of Ethan as part of my volunteer work. The court ordered his community service here. He cleans the garden every morning and teaches basic accounting to residents in the afternoons. He does not speak of you or Sophie, but I can see the weight in his shoulders when he hears her name mentioned. I do not excuse what he did. Every day I watch him live with the consequences of his own choices, and I think about how long regret can last. Some days I think it lasts longer than punishment. You were right to protect her. You were right to prepare. I hope you both find peace in the life you built. With sincerity, Emily. I folded the letter back into its envelope and placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. Forgiveness, I had learned, did not always need witnesses. Sometimes it was just the quiet act of not reopening a wound. 2 weeks later, I stood at a podium in Washington, D.C. at the Women in Law conference. The stage lights were warm and the room buzzed with low conversation. I wore the same navy suit I had worn to court, but the weight of it felt different now. When the host introduced me, I looked out at the rows of faces, lawyers, advocates, mothers, women who had turned pain into purpose. I began the speech the way I began every case file, with facts. I spoke about preparation, about how knowledge is a form of armor, about how fear can be managed when information replaces panic. I told them about the forms that protected Sophie, about the signatures that spoke louder than emotion, about the proof that made the world listen. Then I paused. I said that revenge is not always fire. Sometimes it is structure, order, the deliberate calm of doing things the right way, even when anger begs you to shout. I told them that proof speaks in a language the world cannot dismiss, and that silence is not weakness when it is filled with evidence. When I finished, the room was quiet for a heartbeat, then applause swelled like a tide. I smiled not because of pride, but because I had turned survival into something that might outlive me. Back home, Sophie and I spent Sunday at Green Lake. The air was clear, the trees just starting to burn gold. She carried a kite patterned like the sky itself, pale blue with streaks of white. We ran until it caught the wind and it rose higher than either of us expected. She laughed, her hair flashing in the sun. After a while, she asked, "Mom, do you think I can go to Paris one day?" I nodded. "When you're old enough to keep your own passport safe?" She grinned, watching the kite tug against its string. "Then I'll draw that too." We stayed until the light changed and the water turned the color of metal. On the way home, she fell asleep in the car, the kite folded between her knees. I carried her inside and tucked her into bed, then went to my office and looked at the box on the shelf. The label read, "Case Closed, Ward versus Caldwell, 2024. Inside were copies of every document that had saved her life from becoming someone else's adventure. I sealed the box and slid it beside the others that belonged to Safe Passage cases, finished women free. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the city through the glass. I sat for a long moment, tracing the edge of the label with my fingertip. Justice, I had learned, does not always arrive with applause. Sometimes it is a line signed in ink, a phone call answered, a child asleep in her own bed. Sometimes it is knowing you did not let fear make you cruel. Outside, a thin beam of sunlight cut through the blinds and landed across the closed box. I watched it shift, soft and certain. If anyone ever tells you that calm is weakness, remember this. Preparation is power, proof is freedom. I did not go looking for justice. I wrote it one page at a time with my own name.